Ukraine is not a paragon of democracy. Do you want to use U.S. taxpayer money to fund the banning of Christians? In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my daughter out of your voice. You're just
the easy answer, Biden should step aside, end his candidacy now, so we can see whether it's Newsom or Michelle Obama or whoever else.
All right,
just tell us the truth.
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. Today, we're going to be watching some of the highlights from an event that can only be described these days as a theatrical farce, the Republican presidential debate. And as people are starting to tune in to more genuine, authentic, and long-form conversations, these sorts of debates are becoming more and more hilarious, cringe, and quite frankly insufferable. But we're going to review this one nevertheless. I didn't review the first two because they sucked so badly, and they were actually inconsequential because it's pretty much just the Vivek show. The other candidates really at this stage needn't be taken seriously, but Vivek absolutely killed this one and was particularly strong tonight. So we're going to look at some of the very important points that were raised. Let's get into it.
Mr. Ramaswamy, let me turn to you. Please make your case. Why should you be the nominee and not the former president?
I think there's something deeper going on in the Republican Party here, and I am upset about what happened last night. We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer in the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think that we have to have accountability in our party. For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you. And frankly, look, the people there cheering for losing in the Republican Party. Think about who's moderating this debate. This should be Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. We'd have 10 times the viewership, asking questions that GOP primary voters actually care about and bringing more people into our party. You think the Democrats, and we've got Kristen Welker here, do you think the Democrats would actually hire Greg Gutfeld to host a Democratic debate? They wouldn't do it. And so the fact of the matter is, I mean, Kristen, I'm going to use this time because this is actually about you in the media and the corrupt media establishment. Ask you, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that you pushed on this network for years, was that real or was that Hillary Clinton made up disinformation? Answer the question. Go.
Mr. Roberts.
This is how we get our country back. We need accountability because this media rigged the 2016 election. They rigged the 2020 election with the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
and they're going to rig this election.
Your time is up.
Accountability.
Let me turn to Governor Christie. Why Audience, let's not do this.
So don't you love how Vivek really comes in and just launches a grenade into the mix? All the other people on the stage are just doing the politician thing. You can tell it's just fake. And then Vivek comes in, just cuts the bullshit with a sword, sets the place alight, and highlights the difference between himself and the other candidates who have the collective charisma of a damp rag. So it was a strong start, and we're going to get into some more details next. But for now, let's have a look at the next round of questioning, which was about Israel. In the context of this debate, this is meant to be a chance for all of these Republican nominees to simp as hard as they possibly can for the military-industrial complex and declare their absolute allegiance and readiness to go to war for a country that's not America. So here's how it went.
As President of the United States, what would you be urging Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do at this moment? Governor DeSantis.
I would be telling Bibi, finish the job once and for all with these butchers, Hamas. They're terrorists. They're massacring innocent people. They would wipe every Jew off the globe if they could. He cannot live with that threat right by his country. That Hamas should release every hostage and they should unconditionally surrender. I'm sick of hearing the media. I'm sick of hearing other people blame Israel just for defending itself. We will stand with Israel in word and in deed, in public and in private.
The first thing I said to him when it happened was I said, finish them. Finish them. And the reason is I worked on this every day when I was at the United Nations. And we have to remember that they have to, one, eliminate Hamas, 2, support Israel with whatever they need, whenever they need it. And 3, make sure we bring our hostages home. China is buying oil from Iran. Russia is getting drones and missiles from Iran. And there is an unholy alliance. We need to be clear-eyed. The last thing we need to do is to tell Israel what to do. The only thing we should be doing is supporting them and eliminating Hamas. It is not that Israel needs America. America needs Israel. They are the tip of the spear when it comes to this Islamic terrorism, and we need to make sure that we have their backs in that process.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy. Mr. Ramaswamy, any daylight between you and the candidates we just heard on this issue on what you would tell the Prime Minister?
Not in terms of what I would tell the Prime Minister, no. In fact, I would go one step further. The founding vision of Israel was based on the idea that they don't want to depend on anybody else's sympathy or direction in defending themselves. So what I would tell Bibi is that Israel has the right and the responsibility to defend itself. I would tell him to smoke those terrorists on his southern border, and then I'll tell him as President of the United States, I'll be smoking the terrorists on our southern border.
Just quickly, guys, if you are enjoying this breakdown, and if you do like these sorts of videos, and if you get value from the channel, if you don't mind clicking like and subscribing, that would be enormously helpful. Back to the clips.
That's his responsibility. This is our responsibility. That's how we move forward. But I want to be careful to avoid making the mistakes from the neocon establishment of the past. Corrupt politicians in both parties spent trillions, killed millions, made billions for themselves in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, fighting wars that sent thousands of our sons and daughters, people my age, to die in wars that did not advance anyone's interests, adding $7 trillion to our national debt. And Joe Biden sold off our foreign policy. Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, got a $5 million bribe from Ukraine. That's why we're sending $200 billion back to that same country. The fact of the matter is the Republican Party is not that much better. You have the likes of Nikki Haley, who stepped down from her time at the UN. Bankrupt or in debt was her family. Then she becomes a military contractor. She joins the board of Boeing and otherwise, and is now a multimillionaire. So I think that that's wrong when Republicans do it or Democrats do it. That's the choice we face. Do you want a leader from a different generation who's going to put this country first? Or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
All right, Mr.
In which case, we've got 2 of them on stage
Mr.
tonight.
Ramaswamy, thank you. Senator.
Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels. Lol. But one of the things that I saw a lot of people on Twitter actually missed was that he said that there are 2 of them. And the other person that he is referring to is Ron DeSantis, because of Ron DeSantis's boots, which have been the subject of many memes recently. But I love watching Vivek throw Nikki Haley under the bus. It is very satisfying, and she just kind of stands there with this sort of vacant smile, and behind that smile she's kind of like, yeah, I guess he's right. I guess I kind of did get rich off of war and off of defense contractors. And that is exactly why she is such a champion for war, because it makes her rich. And you've kind of come to expect it now from the neocon puppets. But lately I've been quite shocked, which doesn't happen too often, about the amount of people who have been gung-ho about getting into a new war when it comes to Israel, and all of a sudden who don't want free speech for those who oppose their views.
Anti-Semitism is a symptom of a deeper cancer in a country and a society that is lost, and we are lost. Several years ago when I wrote my first book, Woke Inc., I was talking about they were chanting death to America. Death to white people, death to Christians. Nobody was waking up back then. Now it's even bad. Now they're saying death to Israel and worse. So it is wrong, but we have to get to the root cause here. Now, I think it's really important that we do this through leadership, not censorship. Leadership means fill that void with purpose and meaning. Dilute this wokeism and anti-Semitism to irrelevance. These kids, they have no idea what the heck they're even talking about when they're siding with Hamas over Israel. They are fools. But I also want to caution here, if we go the direction of Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley, with whom I respectfully disagree on this issue, pro-censorship, telling student groups to disband, mark my words, soon they will say if you question a vaccine and its side effects, you're a bioterrorist. Soon they will say that if you show up at a school board meeting, you're a domestic terrorist. Soon if they say that J6 prisoners should be released, you're an insurrectionist terrorist. So that's where this road ends. We don't quash this with censorship because that creates a worse underbelly. We quell it through leadership by calling it out, These university administrators have lost their way, and we need leadership at the top in the United States of America that restores our founding values and that has no place for this kind of anti-Semitic hate. That's where I stand while respecting our Constitution.
You see, guys, one of the things that I love about America is they have this beautiful thing called the First Amendment. This allows for an unprecedented exchange of ideas, and this has been the cornerstone of building that great nation. And another great thing about living in a place where you have this sort of intellectual freedom is the ability to be able to philosophize. And when one practices philosophy responsibly and properly, they have the ability to entertain ideas without necessarily believing them. We can actually look at these various different conflicts from many different angles and take those ideas and ponder them deeply. Thus, we can see if they hold any weight. We don't have to close ourselves off to the perceived other side. But I think that the reason why people do tend to close themselves off to ideas is because they're scared of what they might hear. They're scared of how it might shake up their worldview, and they're scared of having to contend with that in their own mind. But this is what tyrants do. Tyrants forcefully suppress opposing ideas, especially if they know that the emperor wears no clothes, especially if they can't contend with those ideas. And over the past few years, we've seen this a lot with the left. We've seen these university students and the professors and these intellectuals who won't engage in debate. But now I'm sad to say we're seeing it a fair bit with conservatives. Now, if you have some qualms about how the Palestinian people are being treated, or if you have any criticisms of the Israeli government, or why it is that these American institutions seem to be so beholden to this foreign country, or if you would like to stop for a second and consider the motivations of the politicians that are supporting another war in the Middle East and why they might be doing that, then you are unpatriotic, you are anti-Semitic, you are a supporter of terrorism, etc., etc. And just like on the other side, if you were to say, well, Hamas are an extremely brutal and corrupt organization to say the least, and if all of these Muslim countries are so up in arms about the plight of their Palestinian brothers and sisters, then why don't they want to take them in as refugees? Or if you're wondering why you haven't seen any large-scale protests over the last decade or so, when the people of Yemen or Syria were being slaughtered, then all of a sudden you are a supporter of genocide and you don't care about the Palestinian children being killed and pulled from the rubble in the videos, and essentially you are a piece of shit. When you see this level of tribalism where people are so dogmatically convinced on both sides, generally there's going to be a golden mean of some sort. And some of you may feel like you've got your mind totally made up about the whole conflict, and that's fine. Whichever side you fall on, you are entitled to that opinion. But whoever needs to hear this today, I would like to remind you that amidst the unwavering barrage of propaganda that you are being beaten over the head with daily, it's okay to ask questions. You're meant to ask questions. That's what makes the world go round. And if your gut tells you that something's not quite right about the narrative that you're hearing, then explore it more until you feel like you have an educated grasp on the matter. And also, it's okay to disagree with people and even to vehemently disagree with people who you respect and still ultimately respect them and be civil towards them, because sometimes we need to detach the ideas from our personal relationships. So rant over and now let's watch them discuss Iran.
We're going to continue in this vein right now with a question from Matthew Brooks, the CEO of the Republican Jewish Coalition, a partner of the Republican National Committee in this debate.
Do you support the use of military force by the United States against Iran?
The second thing that I will say is I wear heels. They're not for a fashion statement. They're for ammunition. We need to go and take out their infrastructure that they are using to make those strikes with so they can never do it again. Iran responds to strength. You punch them one and you punch them hard and they will back off. You don't respond to an enemy and a terrorist with fear. You respond with strength. When you do that, that's when the world pays attention, and that's when Iran stops.
How far would you go militarily to hold Iran accountable?
Well, first, Matt, thanks for your question, and I appreciate what you've done over the last month. I know it's been very difficult for the community, and appreciate you guys rallying together in difficult times. I actually served in Iraq back in the day, and we had al-Qaeda in Iraq. You had Shia militias that were funded by Iran that were killing hundreds and hundreds of U.S. troops. And as commander-in-chief, I am not going to put our troops in harm's way unless you're willing to defend them with everything you have. Biden has them out there. They're sitting ducks. He's doing glancing blows. That's just inviting more attacks from the Iranians. I would say you harm a hair on the head of an American service member, and you are going to have hell to pay. We are not just going to sit there and let our service members be sitting ducks, and that's true whether it's Iran or whether it's any country on the world. We have to be strong, and we have to defend the people who defend us.
So Nikki Haley wants to go to war with Iran. And unlike Ukraine, this wouldn't be a proxy war. You can't just sort of give them weapons and let hundreds of thousands of their young men die. This would be a hot war. This would be boots on the ground for the US and their allies. Now, obviously, this would cause Iran to activate all of their proxies. It would be a multi-front war, and it would require probably hundreds of thousands of American soldiers, conservatively, to actually go over to the Middle East. And the US is obviously already stretched with problems they're having at home, as well as all of the funding that they've given to Ukraine, plus their national debt and more. And also, things have changed in the last 20 years, and you're not just going to be going and fighting the Taliban in the hills of Afghanistan. And if you couldn't even win that war, then what makes you think that you're going to do any better against the Iranian proxies, which are actually organized armies? And do you think that you would even be able to build up the military for it? I mean, what are these young men going to be lining up to fight for? A military that will try and indoctrinate them with LGBTQ and diversity, equity, and inclusion propaganda? A country that seems to have no pride in itself and no honor, and allows their capital cities and their main cities to be overrun by activists and thugs who want to loot their businesses? A country where in your two-salary household you're struggling to make ends meet, all while watching billions and billions of tax dollars being funneled to a corrupt actor in a corrupt Eastern European country that a few years ago you wouldn't have even been able to point to on a map. All the while you have a geriatric at the helm who clearly isn't even running the show. Something tells me that young men won't be jumping for joy at the prospect of joining this cause. And as a young man myself, as a 28-year-old Australian, which, by the way, guys, America goes to war, Australia follows them. If you think I am going to take up arms to go and try and kill people in the Middle East, whilst these politicians are sitting in their air-conditioned offices and shaking hands and kissing babies, you can kiss my ass. This isn't 2003 anymore. You can't control the narrative through the legacy media. Sorry. And now onto the part about Ukraine, where Vivek has some very based red pill takes.
Mr. Ramaswamy, are you persuaded by President Zelensky's urgent new plea? Where do you stand on more funding?
I'm absolutely unpersuaded. And I'm actually enjoying watching the Ukraine hawks quietly, delicately tiptoe back from their position as this thing has unwound into a disaster. The first half of this race, I was the only person standing for it. Now they're actually quietly coming around to being more cautious, as they should. Level with the American people here. Ukraine is not a paragon of democracy. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties. It has consolidated all media into one state TV media arm. That's not democratic. It has threatened not to hold elections this year unless the U.S. forks over more money. That is not democratic. It has celebrated a Nazi in its ranks, the comedian in cargo pants, a man called Zelensky, doing it in their own ranks. That is not democratic. More facts for you that you won't hear from the mainstream in either party or the mainstream media. The regions of Ukraine that are occupied by Russia right now, in the Donbass, Luhansk, Donetsk. These are Russian-speaking regions that have not even been part of Ukraine since 2014, that other people probably couldn't name those provinces for you. Those are the hard facts. And so to frame this as some kind of battle between good versus evil, don't buy it. And I'd like the likes of the sharpest of the war hawks on Ukraine, Nikki Haley, to have some accountability and answer. Do you want to use U.S. taxpayer money to fund the banning of Christians? That is actually what's happening. They're using the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. They have banned them. The Ukrainian parliament just did this last week, supported by our dollars. And I think you owe it to the American people, Nikki, to at least this one time at least condemn.
Thank you. That's time.
At least to condemn their banning of Christians.
Mr. Ramaswamy, thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy, thank you. We asked the questions. Ambassador Haley,
well, she deserves to
what
answer.
is your take on more funding for Ukraine?
I am telling you, Putin and President Xi are salivating at the thought that someone like that could become president. They would love to see
The fact of the matter is she doesn't answer
So this
the
is
question.
what I will tell you.
We're driving Russia
first of all,
into China's
let's
hands
Ramaswamy,
because of
you
these
had
foolish
your time
policies.
to talk. The ambassador has the floor.
Thank
Ambassador,
you. The
please.
first thing I'll tell you is We all remember what that thug did when he invaded Ukraine. We all know that 500,000 people have died because of Putin. And here is a freedom-loving, pro-American country that is fighting for its survival and its democracy. No, I don't think we should give them cash. I think we should give them the equipment and the ammunition to win. And I'll tell you, if Biden had done it when they first asked for it, this war would be over. But let's also remember this. When you left Afghanistan in shambles and left them with a ton of weapons and money, it's not that we left, it's how we left. When you look at Ukraine, don't think for a second, now everybody wants to move away from Ukraine. They'll want to move away from Israel a year from now. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends. After 9/11, we needed a lot of friends. Now is the time to get partnerships. This unholy alliance between Russia, Ukraine, and China is real. There is a reason that Taiwanese want us to support the Ukrainians. It's because they know that China is coming after them next. There is a reason Ukrainians want us to support Israelis, because they know that if Iran wins, Russia wins.
Ambassador,
we have to see the combination of the three.
Ambassador, thank you. Governor Christie.
Here's the problem with these pathetic excuses for debates. Vivek would absolutely wipe the floor with Nikki Haley in a real and long-form debate. It would not even be competitive, because he has actually done the research and he actually knows what he's talking about in great detail. She, however, gets told what to say by her donors and then says it. Do you think you'll be seeing Nikki Haley on any long-form alternative media podcasts anytime soon? Do you think that you'd see Nikki Haley ever doing what Vivek did and doing an interview with a guy like me, a small YouTube channel? I mean, she's more than welcome to, but something tells me I don't think she'd be in a rush to do it. But when they say things on these debate stages, like Russia's losing the war, and that Putin just wants to take over the world, and Ukraine is just a healthy democracy, and we're just fighting for democracy, it's just flat out wrong. It's just a lie. But they can get away with that because these debates, like I said, they're a theatrical farce. They aren't real. What these debates are is a pledge of allegiance to their donors, to the puppet masters, so that those people who are really in charge can handpick who the next best little puppet will be. And this is why they hate Donald Trump so much, because he came along and he rocked the boat. He funded his own campaign. He wasn't beholden to any of these puppet masters. He's opened people's eyes. He called out the swamp for what they really are, and he's changed the game forever. And to that end, Vivek is obviously doing the same thing. He's funding his own campaign. And now onto the bit where they talk about China.
The question is specifically about the Navy. It's at 291. It's going to go down perhaps as low as 280. Is it enough? And what would you build if you were going to build more?
Not enough. We have to have the ability to back up a strategy of denial of President Xi's ambitions. And if China is able to be the world's leading superpower, that will affect you and your family in ways that are going to be very bad. They will export authoritarianism all around the world as the cost of doing business. They will impose things like social credit scores and internet monitoring. So this is, to this generation, what the Soviet Union was to the post-World War II generation. I've already released a plan. We're going to get to 355 ships at the end of the first term, 385 ships at the end of the second term, but we're going to have a path to 600 ships over the next 20 years. I think the future of freedom is going to be determined in the Indo-Pacific. We have a strategy not just military, but decoupling from the economy and fighting them here at home with their cultural. You know, Ambassador Haley said somehow I wasn't doing. She welcomed them into South Carolina, gave them land near a military base, wrote the Chinese ambassador a love letter saying what a great friend they were. That was like their #1 way to do economic development. In Florida, I banned China from buying land in this state, and we kicked out on our universities, and we kicked the Confucius Institutes out of our universities. We've recognized the threat, and we've acted swiftly and decisively.
First answer is end the toxic divest to invest program. For people who don't know about that, we're decommissioning ships in the South China Sea. The foundation of war is economics. Rebuild our defense industrial base at home. But here's the dirty little secret. Our actual defense industrial base depends on China for the supply chain, for the F-35 jets, for the ships that we're building. Think about this. Why are we stockpiling that if it isn't to actually be strong against our enemy, China? We depend on them for that, just like we depend on them for pharmaceuticals, just like we depend on them for semiconductors. So here's why we can't get tough with China. It's because we depend on them for our modern way of life, and we have to declare economic independence from our enemy. That's the Declaration of Independence that Thomas Jefferson, at the age of 33, would have signed. Today, if he were alive, that's the Declaration of Independence that I will sign as the next president. I do have to recognize that Ron DeSantis was correct about acknowledging Nikki Haley's tough talk when she was ambassador to the UN, calling China our great friend, bringing the CCP to South Carolina. What he left out, though, Ron, and be honest about it, there was a lobbying-based exemption in that bill that allowed Chinese nationals to buy land within a 20-mile radius of a military base lobbied for by one of your donors. So I think we have to call a spade a spade. We need politicians who are independent of the forces that increase our dependence on China. My message to Xi Jinping is this. You are done buying land in this country. You will not donate to universities in this country. U.S. businesses won't expand into the Chinese market until you play by the same set of rules.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
you're kicked out of the WTO, and you actually have to have accountability for the COVID-19 pandemic financially, which unleashed hell on the world. We have to hold them accountable.
Mr. Ramaswamy, we've talked about this. You campaign on TikTok. How do you get TikTok banned if you use it?
Well, I want to laugh at why Nikki Haley didn't answer your question, which was about looking at families in the eye. In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my daughter out of your voice.
Adult daughter. The next generation of Americans are using it. And that's actually the point. You have her supporters propping her up. That's fine. Here's the truth.
You're just
the easy answer is actually to say that we're just going to ban one app. We got to go further. We have to ban any U.S. company actually transferring U.S. data to the Chinese. Here's a story most people don't know. Airbnb hands over U.S. user data to the CCP. Now, that's a U.S.-owned company. So this is the problem when you have Republicans that temporarily go the way the winds blow, and now it's popular to talk tough on China. When she was UN ambassador, called them literally, her words, not mine, our great friend. You can't be fair weather fans of the right policy. Get to the root cause. Even U.S. companies in Silicon Valley are regularly doing it. Cut the virtue signaling.
I love how the question is framed like, how many ships will you build and how will you be ready for war with China, rather than what is your strategy just generally on a broader level to deal with China. And I think that DeSantis is pretty good with this one, pretty on the ball, same with Vivek, but it is a tough question. And I mean, it is one that's going to play out over the next decade or so. The US is very dependent on China, and it's because of their own making. It's because of their own policies that they've become so dependent on Chinese manufacturing, and they've ruined manufacturing in their own country, all the while doing absolute wonders for the Chinese economy. And I'm not saying it's all bad. There are benefits to that, and that's for another video. But it's definitely complicated, and so is the whole Taiwan thing. And if you guys want to see the video where I actually went to Taiwan and I spoke to the people of Taipei about how they view China, and I did a bit of a breakdown of the history, I'm also going to leave that one below. And I'll leave both of those videos that I've mentioned at the recommended at the end. But I think the moral of the story with this whole sort of debate is that the warmongering is real with this one. The narrative arc of this entire debate was kind of like a microcosmic build-up to World War III. Just think about it, the Israel talk and the Ukraine talk and then eventually China. It seems like it's the direction that we're heading in. But there must be a better way. I mean, there has to be a way that America fulfills the role that it should fulfill as the leader of the free world, where they're strong and feared and unpredictable, but also virtuous, not to be messed with, but also not a bully. Now let's have a look at Vivek's closing statements.
We've talked a lot about foreign wars tonight, but we're in the middle of a war right here at home. It's a war not between black and white or Democrat and Republican. It's between those of us who believe in our founding ideals and love this country and a fringe minority who hates the United States of America. And I think it's going to take a commander-in-chief to lead us to victory in that war, who first of all knows that we're in a war. Second of all, can't be captured by the special interests along the way. But third is from the next generation, somebody with fresh legs to lead us to victory. I'll shut down the deep state. I'll declare economic independence from China. I'll keep us out of World War III, and then revive national pride in this country. I also want to close with one message to the Democrat Party. End this farce that Joe Biden is going to be your nominee. We know he's not even the president of the United States. He's a puppet for the managerial class. So have the guts to step up and be honest about who you're actually going to put up so we can have an honest debate. Biden should step aside, end his candidacy now, so we can see whether it's Newsom or Michelle Obama or whoever else.
All right,
just tell us the truth so we can have an honest debate.
Ambassador Haley, you have 1 minute for your closing.
Thank you.
Amazing closing statement. I mean, you can't get much better than that. And he really, really pinpointed something very important there. Who is going to be the Democratic candidate? Because I think we all know by now, and it's kind of like an elephant in the room, it's not going to be Joe Biden. So who's it going to be? Is it going to be Newsom? Is it going to be Michelle Obama? I'm so glad that he put that out there on the table because, I mean, it's kind of important. Anyways, guys, don't forget to watch those videos. I'll leave the links below. If you guys would like to support the channel or check me out on social medias, there's also going to be my link tree below. And if you guys would like to subscribe to the channel, it's going to be here. If you'd like to watch another video, click right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is Rattlesnake TV, keeping you armed and dangerous.
War, defend our freedom, defeat terrorism, wars, win the fight.